Cochise County was named after the famous chief of the Cherokee Apaches. In 1861, a decade-long war was ignited when Cochise was falsely charged with a crime. His intelligence and tenacity eventually won the respect of settler and soldier alike. He made peace with the Army in 1872. On June 8, 1874, Chief Cochise passed away, but his strength of foundation and his relationship with the settlers of the area proved to continue to shape the legacy of Cochise County as well as the Cochise County Sheriff's Office. John Behan was the first sheriff of Cochise County. He had been a deputy sheriff in charge of county business while the area was still part of Pima County. He was a friendly man with slightly protruding brown eyes. Behan and his friend John Dunbar, the county assessor, also owned the livery stable. During Behan's term of office, the sheriff acted as both assessor and county treasurer. Behan killed Dick Joby, who had resisted arrest, and from that moment never carried a gun again. During his term, the incident known as the shootout at the OK Corral occurred, with Virgil, Wyatt, Morgan Earp, and the Clantons and the McClarys. Behan served as sheriff until the election, November 18, 1882, at which time he chose not to run for office. J.L. Ward was elected sheriff on November 15, 1882, becoming the first elected sheriff of Cochise County. During his term of office, he had the misfortune of losing a prisoner, John Heath, to a lynch mob from Bisbee. Ward supervised the hangings of the perpetrators of the Bisbee Massacre. Robert Hatch ran unopposed in the election of 1884 and became sheriff of Cochise County. He's best remembered for his popular Bob Hatch Saloon. In 1886, John Slaughter was elected sheriff in a close race against Cyrus H. Bryant. Slaughter was a small man, 5 foot 4 inches, and had piercing black eyes. He told Mrs. Myrtle Street that he was part Cherokee Indian. Slaughter originally came to Arizona from Texas in 1879, settling in Hereford Springs, and was the first person to raise alfalfa in Cochise County. Sheriff Slaughter had many different obstacles to contend with, including Apaches, hobos who had followed the newly built railroads, horse thieves, and robbers. Slaughter was in the saddle much of his time in office, usually accompanied by Paco, his ranch hand, or perhaps bodyguard. During and after his term, he built up his 70,000-acre San Bernardino ranch to graze 50,000 head of cattle. Slaughter died in 1922, and his wife founded the John H. Slaughter Ranch Incorporated, which has been restored and presently open to the public.
Sheriff John Slaughter was very, very interested in his cattle ranching business. But one person he did deputize was Bert Alvord, who would later turn outlaw. This page from a justice docket here shows that in 1901, Slaughter himself was arrested. He was arrested for carrying a .45 caliber six-shooter concealed on his person.
C.B. Kelton was a Southerner and had served as a captain with Morgan during the Civil War. He was 6 feet tall and weighed 170 pounds. A kind-hearted man, he worried about the health of his prisoners and permitted them to exercise in the jail yard. This practice caused him to lose a couple of prisoners who managed to scramble over the back wall behind the jailers' backs. After his term as sheriff, he served as a member of the Arizona Territorial Legislature. November 6, 1894, C.S. Fly was elected sheriff. Fly proved to be an excellent sheriff, but is best remembered for his photography. He received national recognition during the Apaches War when he rode with the troops during the campaign against Geronimo, packed with his heavy photo equipment into the Sierra Madre Mountains. He later photographed Geronimo's surrender to General Nelson Miles in Skeleton Canyon on September 1886. As a sheriff, C.S. Fly spent most of his time in the field chasing train robbers.
Camilla Sidney, aka C.S. Fly, and his wife Molly were accomplished photographers. They owned a photo studio and a lodging business right next to the vacant lot that would play host to the big gunfight near the OK Corral. C.S. Fly loved to take his camera with him on his adventures throughout the territory. Seen here are some of his photographs that he took, including some of the photographs of indigenous communities of Cochise County. In fact, C.S. Fly's portrait of George Warren, considered the founder of the town of Bisbee, is featured in the state seal for Arizona.
November 3, 1896, Cochise County voters went to the polls and elected Scott White as sheriff. White was a bicycle enthusiast, while past sheriffs had ridden horseback or driven teams of horses pulling carriages. White pedaled around the county on his shiny wheel. It was common for him to pedal 20 miles on his high roller. And he and his family lived well because in addition to his salary, he had income from mining stock, which included copper mines in Cananea and Cabre Grande. Justice was swift yet tempered during the time he held office as sheriff. The Haldeman brothers were hanged at the Tombstone Courthouse for fatally shooting Deputy Sheriff Ainsworth. Although Sheriff White issued ornate black-bordered invitations to the hanging, he permitted no levity and put a stop to the sale of pieces of the execution rope. Adelbert Lewis was elected Cochise County Sheriff November 6, 1900, and again in 1902. Lewis was a very popular sheriff. He was just a big kid, his friends claimed. He was 6 feet 6 inches tall and weighed 260 pounds. His laugh could be heard for a quarter mile. Lewis died of cancer of the tongue in 1912.
Sheriff Adelbert Big Del Lewis was the sheriff during several jail escapes from the Cochise County Jail, including Bert Alvord and Billy Stiles. In 1904, the jail was expanded and upgraded. You can see here the line where the south wing of the building was expanded.
In 1904, Stuart Hunt was elected sheriff by a slim 7-vote margin. The new sheriff was a stocky, muscular man, standing 5 foot 9 inches and weighing 175 pounds. This photo is believed to have been taken around 1905 in a group photo with county officials. Hunt was of the highest character, thrifty and careful with money. He gave the county its most economical administration. When Hunt came up for re-election in 1906, he maintained his high standard and refused to spend money, choosing to run strictly on his excellent record. He was never known to enter a busy bar on a payday and order drinks on the house, which was the accepted way of winning elections in those days. He lost the election to John White.
Sheriff Hunt almost oversaw the 8th hanging at the Cochise County Courthouse. When Esperanto Heredia was sentenced to be hanged, Sheriff Hunt was going to delegate the deadly task to his jailer, Mac Axford, who promptly resigned, believing Heredia to be innocent. At the last minute, Heredia's sentence was commuted to life in prison. Sheriff Hunt's jailer, Mac Axford, wrote in his memoir about establishing a boxing ring here in the Cochise County Jail, which can be seen on jail map sketches provided by Axford later in his life.
John F. White was a bouncing extrovert, much given to playing poker with a few cronies. There was no election in 1910 because statehood was imminent. John F. White was elected to the office in 1911, and he was the last of the territorial sheriffs of Cochise County. Harry Wheeler was the first elected Cochise County sheriff after Arizona became a state. He successfully ran for election again in 1914 and 1916. Of all of the Cochise County sheriffs, Wheeler was the most colorful and controversial. During Wheeler's term of office, Arizona was a dry state, while New Mexico was a wet state. He often waited at the state line with a deputy and arrested bootleggers as they brought liquor into Arizona. Once arrested, he would order them to go to the county jail in Tombstone on their honor. Not one failed to show up. Wheeler never sent an arrested man to jail without a good meal and a promise of a lawyer, even if he had to spend his own money to get him one. In 1916, the New Mexico and Arizona international border was in an uproar over the raids of the bandit Pancho Villa. At this time, Mexico was in a state of revolution. In 1917, Sheriff Wheeler had orders from the county supervisor to break the miners' strike in Bisbee. Striking workers were loaded into waiting cattle cars and shipped to Columbus, New Mexico. Sheriff Wheeler resigned soon after the Bisbee deportation and enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Corps.
Before he was sheriff, Harry Wheeler was the only Arizona Ranger to serve in every rank from private to captain. During his time as sheriff, Harry Wheeler loved automobiles and began using them to chase bootleggers near the New Mexico border.
Guy Welch was a deputy under Sheriff Wheeler. He had also been a postmaster in Hereford before Wheeler's term in office. Welch finished Wheeler's term after his resignation. Welch did not run for re-election and moved to California with his family, where his daughter dated Richard Nixon a few times when they were both young.
Due to Harry Wheeler's enlistment, Guy Welch stepped in as sheriff. Guy Welch would later be the Cochise County treasurer, whose vault would be located right here. This vault is original to 1882, located inside the county treasurer's office.
In the election of 1918, McDonald won by a Democratic landslide. Before his election, McDonald had been a street superintendent of Bisbee. His parents owned the Bisbee Waterworks. They had built the water storage reservoir in the hills at the end of Brewery Gulch and sold water piped in from there and from McDonald's well to much of Bisbee, until the present waterworks were built in Naco.
While Harry Wheeler was sheriff at the time of the Bisbee deportation, it was Sheriff McDonald who had to deliver hundreds of arrest warrants once the deportation came to a trial. During the course of the trial, the deportation jury were sequestered, having to live here in this courthouse. It was Sheriff McDonald that would have overseen that process.
J.C. Hood was elected sheriff in 1920. Before he was sheriff, he and his family owned and operated an impressive tourist hotel in Tombstone. It burned in 1940. Hood died August 1960 in Kingman, where he had been a successful cattleman and rancher. J.F. McDonald served as Cochise County Sheriff from 1923 to 1926. In 1926, George Henshaw became sheriff. He was elected again in 1928, and he was the first early-day Cochise County Sheriff to have been born in Arizona. He was born in Phoenix and moved to Bisbee in 1900. Before his time as sheriff, Henshaw had been a bookkeeper for the Cananea Consolidated Copper Company in Mexico. In 1929, Mexico was torn, once again by revolution. Fighting was violent in Naco, Sonora. Sightseeing tourists from all over the country visited the border to watch people getting killed. A dozen spectators were wounded, and Sheriff Henshaw swore in extra deputies to shoo the curious back out of bullet range. The commanding officer at Fort Huachuca sent 100 troops to the border of Arizona, and the governor alerted the National Guard. However, the state attorney general ruled the Cochise County Sheriff was in charge of keeping order at the border.
On display at the Tombstone Courthouse State Historic Park are 2 badges and 2 revolvers that had belonged to Sheriff Henshaw.
Fred Kenny, the Bisbee constable, ran against Henshaw for sheriff in 1930 and won the election by 40 votes. Kenny was the last sheriff to serve in the Tombstone Courthouse. He was killed in an automobile accident in El Paso. Sheriff Kenny is the first sheriff to die in the line of duty while serving the citizens of Cochise County. His term was completed by I.V. Pruitt. Tom William Volker was elected sheriff in 1932. As mentioned before, after Fred Kenny's death, I.V. Pruitt completed his term of office, then was elected himself in 1935. Pruitt served Cochise County well until 1952, when he lost the election to Undersheriff Jack Howard. Pruitt always wore a big white hat, and during his years in office, he drove about the county in a large black Buick. He was in the office during the years of World War II, when 2 full divisions were trained at Fort Huachuca, and the Bisbee mines worked around the clock to aid the war effort. Many of his best deputies chose military service, yet when he left office, he said he did not leave a single unsolved case behind. Jack Howard was a native of Texas and, like Pruitt, always wore a hat. He worked many years as an underground shift boss for the Phelps Dodge mines and worked as a county jailer for Pruitt before becoming undersheriff. Howard was 6 feet tall and looked every inch a stereotypical sheriff. After his term in office, he was advisor for the television series Sheriff of Cochise. He died in April of 1959. Charlie Stewart, who was undersheriff of Howard, had served as a Cochise County supervisor and was elected sheriff in 1958. After he retired, he owned a sports shop in Douglas. Stewart died in 1974 and was buried in Bisbee. Phil Olander, a native of the Bowie-San Simon area, was elected sheriff of Cochise County. He served 2 terms. He was an experienced and popular police officer who had worked for the Tucson Police Department. After he left office, he worked for Phelps Dodge and had a successful pest control service in Bisbee. Jimmy Wilson, a native Arizonan whose parents operated a mercantile in Naco, Arizona for many years, was Cochise County Sheriff to 1976. He was a popular sheriff, noted for his cooperation with Mexico police officers. He was especially successful in recovering stolen vehicles. Jimmy Judd was elected in 1976 and served as sheriff for 16 years until 1992. He had served as undersheriff for Jimmy Wilson since 1973, and upon Wilson's retirement, ran for the vacated office and won. During Judd's time as sheriff, the current location of the Cochise County Sheriff's Office was moved to Judd Drive. It was moved from the Superior Courthouse building in Old Bisbee. After leaving office in 1992, Jimmy Judd again entered the political arena, this time running for the office of Justice of the Peace, Precinct 3 in Benson. Jimmy Judd was laid to rest on December 5, 2005. John Pintek served as Cochise County Sheriff from 1993 to 1996. Larry Deaver was a 30-year Cochise County law enforcement veteran. He was elected to his first term as sheriff in 1996, following a distinguished 20-year career working in law enforcement. Larry Deaver was privileged to direct the development of several innovative sheriff's office programs to include SWAT, search and rescue, and a multi-agency federal, state, and local law enforcement counter-narcotics unit.
Larry and I moved back to Cochise County in 1976, which was his hometown, and he had the opportunity to apply for the Cochise County Sheriff's Department. This is his original application, which was completed by hand along with his resume, and he was hired in March of 1976 for the salary of $705 a month. Larry served as a deputy in the county for 20 years, and during that time, we moved to St. David and built our first home, which I still am living in. And he was promoted to lieutenant and then a major, a captain, and then a major within his first 10 years of serving. In this picture,
a couple memories I have of my father in the early 80s and the incident that happened in Miracle Valley when he was involved in the shootout that occurred there. That was one of my earliest memories. I remember being up in Phoenix at the time at my uncle and aunt's house, and my mom came in and she started to try to tell us that your dad's been shot, but he's okay. And of course that was a shocking thing for a kid here, and she was in tears. So it was I have that burned in my memory of that happening.
One thing I'm lucky enough to have is his very first service revolver. This is a .38 special. This was something that he had. This was his very first service revolver when he was made a deputy in what year?
1976.
1976. And so this is a piece that I hold. After he passed, all of the brothers were able to get something of him to carry on his legacy and of his very first service revolver as a Cochise County Sheriff's Office deputy.
Larry took his retirement in 1996, which was his 20-year retirement, and we went on the campaign trail in 1996 to pursue his dream, which was to become the sheriff. This was the first T-shirt that we had, and the back of it was something we're very proud of. Larry ran on the motto that it was sheriff for all of Cochise County, and we had a friend who lived in Tombstone that was able to draw this map, and this little card shows our logo, which was one that we carried through every time he ran. We waited patiently for the results, and he was elected in 1996 as the first Republican sheriff of Cochise County.
In my hands is a cowboy hat. And from my dad's first day as sheriff up until the day he passed away, he never went anywhere without a cowboy hat. When people remember him now, make comments about him being, a title, a good guy with a white hat.
Yeah, Larry was elected the first time, like we said, in 1996, and we had to run for re-election every 4 years in the year 2000, 2004, 2008. And we were geared up for 2012, where he did not have an opponent when he was tragically taken from us prior to that election.
In September 2012, my father passed away. He was driving a vehicle, driving to meet his son, in fact, at an elk camp to go elk hunting, which is, again, one of the things that he loved doing best. When tragically he was involved in a vehicle accident and passed away.
Many people reached out and just loved him, and it was a shock felt around the entire nation, really, in the law enforcement community, because he was so well known and so well respected. And it was certainly challenging for our family, but we were lifted up during that time. And one thing that came from that was we were presented as a family from the Arizona State Legislature a pistol, the Centennial from 1912 to 2012, and they presented it to our family on behalf of my dad. And they passed legislation there that day memorializing him, and it was a very special time and moment for our family. So we still have that pistol with us, and this was his badge when he died. And so something that we always have to hang on to in memory of him, and we remember him very fondly.
We realized that he really was bigger than life, and we loved him and we miss him.
On November 6, 2012, Mark Dannels was elected as Cochise County Sheriff.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Dannels. I'm the sheriff here in Cochise County, Arizona, located in the southeast corner of the state. Let me just say, as I give this historical discussion today with you all, how blessed I am in my law enforcement career. 41 years ago today, I was in the police academy. I was a young 20-year-old going to the academy after serving an honorable tour in the military. And I grew up as a Midwest kid. And then to be stationed out here in Arizona and getting out in '84, getting hired by the Bisbee Police Department and sending me to the police academy, which started my career. And then January 28th of 1986, I joined the ranks of the Cochise County Sheriff's Office, and it's a ride that I'm still on today. Working my way all the way up to commander, overseeing operations and patrol, to retiring in 2008, where I stayed on as a reserve, but then became a police chief up on the coast in the south part of Oregon. Spent 3 years up there, but every 3 months I came back and worked for the Cochise County Sheriff's Office to keep my certification in Arizona going. I was blessed when I came back in 2011 to start my campaign to run for sheriff, working alongside Larry Deaver, the sheriff I'd worked for 28 and a half years. My friend, my mentor. He taught me a lot. A lot of stuff he taught me, I'm still practicing today. His legacy lives on in the sheriff's office along with many other sheriffs. I'm the 26th sitting sheriff since 1881. I will say that we miss Larry. We miss the many sheriffs. Sheriff Jimmy Judd, a sheriff that hired me back in the 80s and taught me a lot. And the other sheriffs around the state and the national that have helped set the stage for where I'm at today. I didn't do this alone. I did it with talented leaders, police chiefs, national leaders, state leaders, but most important, the sheriffs that I've had the opportunity to work alongside. From my friends, my sheriffs at Western State Sheriff's Association, my Southwest Border Sheriffs friends, my national sheriffs from all over the country, and my major county sheriffs that work in the major cities. We all bring something to the table, but I've learned from each one of you. Again, this is my 41st year. I'm blessed to be sitting here wearing the badge that I share along with 3,000 plus other sheriffs in this country. But I got to give a big shout out to my family. My wife, Nikki, we've been married 38 years. She's been my kickstand. Otherwise, this bicycle fell over a lot more than it has. Thank you, Nikki. I love you. To my 3 boys, Justin, Ryan, and Corey and their families, and my 7 grandkids, I couldn't do it without you. I really couldn't. And to my team members here at the Cochise County Sheriff's Office. From our last hire, the almost 400 people that serve the mission here. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be your sheriff. Thanks for allowing me to work with you, help lead this organization in a culture that's, I think, is one of the best in the state. Over the last 13 years as a sheriff here in Cochise County, we've set standards that most places would never see a rural sheriff's office hold. From our helicopters to our standards of practice, our professionalism, our mental health team, our equipment, our patrol units, and our logo. Leading the way since 1881. As now I'm part of the legacy of the Cochise County Sheriff's Department, thank you to the people of Cochise County that trusted me enough to be your sheriff, that trusted me enough to take that sacred authority as a sheriff and let me practice in this county for you and with you. As I close out here, I'm in my 4th term as sheriff. I'm the incoming president for Western States. Thanks to my fellow sheriffs west of the Mississippi. Thank you for that opportunity. I sit as the president chair of Southwest Border Sheriffs. Thanks to my Southwest Border Sheriffs. Chair and National Sheriffs for Border Security. And thanks to all my national sheriffs and leadership within NSA to allow me to do that. But just thanks for being a friend and this opportunity that comes with that friendship. And when we're all done being sheriffs, we all have vacation destinations as we come together to travel this great country to see each other. God bless you all and thank you.